Elvira travels Randolph Carter's mysterious Dreamlands to keep the Necronomicon away from H.P. Lovecraft and Nyarlathotep. We're going to talk about it right here in our review of Elvira Meets H.P. Lovecraft number 4. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Elvira Meets H.P. Lovecraft number 4. This issue is written by David Avallone with art by Cooper Bell, colors by Walter Pereira, letters by Taylor Esposito, and the main cover A, is drawn by Dave Acosta. Before we dig into this issue, let's recap what happened in issue number 3. Elvira and Lovecraft make it to their destination. They get their hands on the real Necronomicon at the same time as Nyarlathotep and his minions hit them up at the same spot. Lovecraft says, "Give me the book. I know a spell, and I can banish Nyarlathotep, and so he'll never bother us again, and we've won, and therefore it's the end of the story." But maybe not so much. So he gets the book, he casts a spell, and Nyarlathotep is banished to some dimension unknown. And so it worked. But of course, when they decide to take the book and bring it to the great ones or the ancient ones that put him on the mission in the first place, he decides that he's going to turn evil and he's going to use the book for himself to become the leader of the gods, as you will, their emissary, and take over the earth. Elvira says, "Nope. Not going to have any of that." She snatches a book and jumps through one of the portals that happen to be nearby, and she winds up in some place strange. That brings us to issue number 4, where we catch up with Elvira, and she is trying to figure out where she is. She's in the middle of a forest in some strange place, and she's attacked by these Zoogs. And if you're familiar with Lovecraft history, Zoogs are sort of like these rat-like creatures that have tentacles that come out of their mouth, and it's pretty nasty stuff. Before the Zoogs can attack her and eat her, she is saved by a swarm of cats, who are the cats from the moon, which in Lovecraft's lore are intelligent cats who can speak, and they're generally speaking, they're good guys. Elvira has a surprising to her at least, polite conversation with the cats, and she asks for help, saying, "I need to get this book to someplace safe. What can I do with it? I don't know. Can you find someone to help me? Maybe like a wizard or a mage or something?" And they said, we've got just the right person for you." So she follows one of the cats down to the riverside. And find a sort of glowy, ghost-like estate. Knocks on the door, and who does it wind up being? It's Robert Bloch, famous writer Robert Bloch, most notable for writing the book Psycho, which is on which the famous movie is based. They have a pleasant lunch. They chill out. He shoos away somebody who's living inside the house who keeps dressing up like his mother. And of course, it's a very Psycho-ish type of callback. And Bloch suggests, "Hey, look, if these two guys are after you, Nyarlathotep and Lovecraft, for different reasons, they both want the same book. So they're competing against each other, but they want the book. Maybe the thing to do is to do what Lovecraft was supposed to do in the first place, which is get the book to the great god Nodens." Elvira says, "You know what? That's a great idea. So how do I get there?" Robert Bloch says, "Take this train to Leng. Leng will get you to unknown Kadath if you hop a ride with a night gaunt. And if you're hearing the words, you know this is a super, super deep cut story on Lovecraft, particularly the story of the Dream Crest of Unknown Kadath." She hops on the train, and that's also a deep cut from Robert Bloch because of that Hellbound Train, which is his mystical story, which is probably not as well known as Lovecraft, but you get the idea. She hops on the train. She gets off at Leng, where she's met by Chocho Lama of Leng, who is also described as the one who could not, or is not to be described, which is sort of an in-joke and a dad joke at the same time. But he wants the book for himself once he recognizes it, and then chaos ensues. Thankfully, Mortimer, the Night Gaunt who we saw in the previous issue, swoops in to assist. He snatches Elvira up before the Lama of Leng can do something nasty to her to take the book. He flies her to the gates of Unknown Kadath, which is the city of the gods. And just a few minutes, or at least a minute or so right behind her, is Lovecraft and Nyarlathotep, and they're all racing to get the book. They get into the gates, and what they find is a kitsune, which is a sort of a person with the head of a fox. And his name is Jack, who is essentially the gatekeeper or the guard, if you will. And he says, "I'm not having any of your nonsense. What do you all want?" They each make their sales pitch. He says, "Well, we're not going to sell this here." And Elvira says, "Just give this book to Nodens so I can be done with this and get out of here." He says, "Nope, not going to bother him with this trivial nonsense, but I've got a better idea." And she puts them all in front of judgment, in front of another famous old one. Let's switch over to the technical aspects, starting with the character development. This issue, more than the prior ones, Elvira is more taken along by the story rather than being a active participant and has her own agency in the story. In the good way, this very much mimics Randolph Carter's journey through the Dreamlands in his quest for unknown Kadath. But on the other side of that coin, she's sort of like a reactive character. She's a passive character more than anything else. She has her moments, but really the story is carrying her along rather than her guiding her own story. So there's a little bit of a difference here in how this issue is portrayed versus the other ones. Moving over to the art, Kubrick's artwork is fun, it's bright, it's imaginative, it's creative, and it's extremely expressive. So there's a lot of pop and there's a lot of visual engagement to kind of grab your eyeballs. And still, amazingly, in this issue and all the previous ones, this is the most, I would say, accurate, if that's even a word, because it doesn't quite make sense because it's not supposed to be accurate, the most accurate depiction of Nyarlathotep that I think we've ever seen. Plus, there's some in-joke in part of the story when Elvira first meets Chocho, the high priest, not to be described. And the fact that they're describing him for somebody who's not supposed to be described is kind of a dad joke. It's an in-joke, and it seems like it wouldn't work, but it kind of works, and it's kind of funny, but it's a visual gag that they definitely pull off. So thumbs up and kudos to Kubrick. All right, let's move over to pacing and structure. David Avalloni's pacing moves like a raging river. That's the term that we came up with because it's so much happening and it's very quick. Now the sequence of events flows in a way that makes sense. You got plenty of fantasy vistas and all the things are happening all at once. It comes at you very rapid fire, but it doesn't get chaotic. You don't get lost. It's not confusing. And if you're a Lovecraft fan, there are so many Easter eggs. I mean, it's ridiculous how many little bits and pieces you can pick out of this story. Plot-wise, as far as the overall structure is concerned, this really is a miniature version of the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, which is the famous Lovecraft story. So if you're a Lovecraft fan and you know that story and you've read it multiple times, as we have, you'll see all the references and the hints and the sort of side jokes or hidden in jokes. It's all there. Plus, when you start to include Robert Bloch, who you're like, why is Robert Bloch in the middle of this? There is a mentor-mentee level of relationship between Robert Bloch and H.P. Lovecraft in real life. So that's where that comes from. But on the kind of, I won't say negative side, but just something you got to watch out for is there are so many deep cuts. They are really deep. So if you're not familiar with the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, if you're not familiar with Robert Bloch, or if you're not familiar particularly with Robert Bloch's that Hellbound Train story, some of this stuff is going to seem like weird esoteric happenings that don't really make any sense. They're sort of weird for the sake of being weird. It's not. There is a connection there, but you have to be deep into the lore of those writers and their stories for it to make sense. Thematically, this is just a basic good versus evil story. Elvira has the thing that the bad people want, and she's on a race to get it away from them. There's not a lot of depth or deep thought process or say layers to the story. It's very much just keep the powerful thing away from the bad guy. So it's okay. Not every story has to have a deep meaning or subtext, if you will. But if you're looking for something more extensive or layered, this isn't it. So then when we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, is where does this issue fit in the context of the broader story? Obviously, Lovecraft's turn at the end of the last issue sort of turned him from a repentant hero to now a full-on villain, which I suppose is understandable. But that really changes the direction of where the story's going, as far as it went from a two-person quest to a single-person quest. So that changes the dynamic a little bit. And again, if you're not familiar with the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath or some of Lovecraft's other writings, this really puts all the Lovecraft stuff at the forefront, and it's less of an Elvira story than more of a Lovecraft parody, if that makes sense. So if you're not familiar with the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, you might find yourself a little bit lost in spots. But it helps to go back and read that story, which go ahead and do that because it's free. Final thoughts when we think about Elvira Meets H.P. Lovecraft number 4. It's probably the best homage to a Randolph Carter story without actually having Randolph Carter in it. which is kind of unusual, but okay. You get lots of great imagery that are related to the classic story, lots of cameos, lots of side jokes, lots of wink winks to the camera and the audience, and lots of literary reference jokes. All fun stuff if you're into that sort of thing. Plus, Kuberbal's art is amazing. That said, because some of the in-jokes and the references are super, super deep, if you're not familiar with that stuff, for example, the relationship between Lovecraft and Robert Bloch, you might find yourself a little bit lost, so maybe not the greatest jumping on point for casual readers. Therefore, we're going to give Elvira Meets H.P. Lovecraft #4 from Dynamite Comics an 8 out of 10. You can get by without understanding the in-jokes and the references. It just may not make as much sense, or you may not get the joke always. But overall, for Lovecraft fans, this is a fantastic comic, and Elvira fans as well. So let us know what you think. Are you enjoying the series so far? Do you like Elvira comics? Do you like comics that poke fun at H.P. Lovecraft's, I should say, unseemly personal proclivities and attitudes, especially about race? Let us know in the comment section. Otherwise, please stay tuned through the outro for the next review.